Welcome back to the show, everyone. Sam and I sit down to talk about how anyone can travel the world if you do the proper planning and budgeting. We also talk about some of our crazy trips of sleeping in cars and airports to save any dollar we could while traveling. If you guys enjoyed our podcast, we would really appreciate a review on Spotify. With that being said, let's get into it.
So, let me ask you this question, man.
Okay.
What is travel to you?
Travel?
Yeah.
I guess going somewhere away from your hometown or like where you live.
Okay.
Or perhaps within it. Just somewhere that, I don't know. What is it to you?
I don't know. I feel like it's experience, I think. Like, that's a good way to sum it up. But also, like you were saying, like, you have to go be somewhere different. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, like, all the way across the country or all the way across the world. And you have to take a 15-hour plane to get there. It could also mean just, like, something as simple as, like, going to a new restaurant you went to and seeing a bunch of new faces that you never saw before. Like, I think that's still travel in a sense. But obviously there's different aspects. Like, there's a bunch of tiers to travel. And what do you think, like, why does travel resonate with you so much, you know? Like, what do you like so much about traveling?
I mean,
if you do like traveling.
I do. And it's going to be more of the travel where I go, maybe not to a new restaurant, but to a new state or country. That's what I really enjoy. Just seeing stuff that you don't see normally. Like, here in Raleigh, I see buildings, right? When we went to
I'm pretty sure there's buildings in every city.
But like we live in the city. That's pretty much, there's some...
Oh yeah, like skyscrapers.
Yeah. There's not too much natural landscape or whatever compared to other places. Whereas going to the Northwest, rainforest, beaches, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that's
that you don't see here.
Yeah, and travel, like, a lot of people think that you have to, like, spend all this money and, like, all this attention and, like, plan it out, like, super super far ahead, and, like, you have to make this big commitment ahead of time just to travel and, like, see different things. But you don't have to do that, and, like, we're living proof of doing that. Like, we literally let's summarize the trip of our Busch Gardens trip for our viewers, just so they understand that we've literally been through the worst of traveling cheaply.
Yeah, this is ultimate down low of traveling.
Okay, so tell them like what, like how the trip set up, because, like, remember how we had, like, we bought the pass, like, years in COVID. Tell them like how it set up.
All right, so Kyle, two of our friends and I, we bought Busch Gardens season passes like the year before when they were crazy cheap. They were like $60 for an entire year, and then
this was two parks. Keep in mind,
yeah,
it's like the water park,
and the amusement park.
Yeah,
so it's a great deal. And then COVID came along, and they closed that whole year, so we couldn't go. But then the following year, they transferred your season pass to that year. So we're like, oh, okay, well, we got to use it now. We got to get our money's worth. But our two friends backed out, essentially.
Yeah.
And so me and Kyle were like, okay, I guess we'll just go ourselves. But we didn't want to spend any money on a hotel or anything to have to spend money other than the actual season pass that we'd already bought. So we decided, where can we sleep in our car, right? And we found out Cracker Barrel lets you sleep in your car in their parking lot.
Great hack. Like, you don't have to have an RV. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have, like, it could literally be a sedan, and they will let you sleep in your car. That's what I love about Cracker Barrel. Not only their food.
So my car, actually, the seats, each, like the front seat and the passenger seat, both go down to essentially form two different beds. So we're like, okay, let's just take my car. We could turn our chairs into beds, and then we can sleep in the parking lot of Cracker Barrel, which is 5 to 10 minutes away from Busch Gardens and the water park. So that's what we did. We drove up there, slept in Cracker Barrel, went to the park, came back to Cracker Barrel, slept there again, went back to the park the next day, and then drove home.
Yeah, it was 2 nights in Cracker Barrel, wasn't it? Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it was in the summer too, because like I'm pretty sure the water park wasn't open, so it was it was like 80 degrees. I'm pretty sure. I mean, we parked in the shade as much as we could, but like once the sun came up at like 6:30 or whatever time it was, we were screwed. And the car was all fogging up. We like woke up in the middle of the night because we forgot to roll down the windows. that was not a smart move there. But the point is, like, you can squeeze like a trip out of anything. Like, even we probably spent less than $100 each total on a 2-day trip to an amusement park, and it was like 3 hours away, I think, from Raleigh. So like, you can do it. You just, obviously there's different levels, but like, if you really want to be like super cheap and like just go out and just see something different, you can sleep in your car at a Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel is literally all over the place.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be somewhere super close, right? Over spring break, we went to Puerto Rico. on super short notice.
Oh, shit.
Literally a month before. We were
This is a killer story,
okay,
too.
we're going to go to Puerto Rico with 6 of our friends. And our entire goal was make this as cheap as possible. What did we do? We slept in a 1-bedroom Airbnb, and that was pretty much the only thing we bought.
And then also, like, we had a layover that got there at like 3 a.m. in the morning or something. And it was like, we didn't want to, or I personally didn't want to spend the Airbnb for the night before because we would be getting there at like 5 a.m. So I was like, okay, why are we going to spend another $200 a night on this Airbnb and not even get there till 6 a.m.? So we ended up staying at the airport and killing time. And then we ended up going to some bar at like 5 a.m. in the morning, and then ended up finally at the condo that we rented out, and just sat there in the lobby. Luckily, the security guard was super chill. But yeah, that's another example of just like we really just were trying to minimize the expenses. Obviously, we probably should have in the long run. I mean, we're splitting it with 6 people, so that's another thing that we'll get into is just traveling in groups, because there's so much value in that. But like to keep it on small scale here, like cities, like a lot of people don't think that you can like experience new things even in your city, and like people always are like, oh, I want to go across the country to see something. But you can see new things like in your city, especially if you live in a big city. I mean, most cities have a bunch of stuff, but like there's like local restaurants that you can go to and like local experiences. And you can just make like a 20-minute or 30-minute drive. Sometimes like if you drive more than an hour, you'll get even more unique things. And so you can go to these restaurants and meet new people and see new faces. They might have a different perspective. Obviously, it's not going to be like a whole different culture or whatnot, but you can still get that feel of travel. And it's not going to be like $200 for you to make that trip. So make sure you guys like just Google like in your Raleigh that like, or in your city, like which places that are like unique and experiences, because like there's a lot of places like restaurants that have like these cool designs and like you can get a nice feel for it and then walk around like a plaza, like North Hills. Shout out North Hills, they got a cool little area. It's like you got to think like across the country, like what city, if you're in a city or if you're living in a city and you want to see something different, there's so much for you to see. And one of the big examples here in Raleigh NC is Dixie Park. And like there's this huge sunflower field that literally people drive like an hour like all around Raleigh just to see it, and it's like, wow, this just personally I don't really see the value in it, but also a hack like that for you to get around your city, which is also really cool. Something that we did in Puerto Rico actually is like if you take the city transportation, you can like see like a lot of the culture and like you really experience like what it's like to live in the city. It might be a longer commute, but like I really enjoyed like the bus. We took like a 40-minute bus ride, but it would have been like a 15-minute Uber if we didn't take the bus. But like the trade-off there of like seeing the community and like seeing the city downtown and like how there was all these workers and like communities and whatnot, it was super cool, and it was an amazing trade-off. So, and it's super cheap. It's literally like what we paid, like I'm pretty sure we paid like $1.50 for our ride to Old San Juan, which was super nice. And then also another aspect of like travel that like makes you feel like you're traveling or doing something different is live music. And like you can do that literally even 10 minutes away at a local restaurant or something, and like it's a new voice and like new face. Sometimes usually they're like checked out week over week, but like you can still get a new experience, and that's what I think travel's about. Because if you go to a new restaurant that has live music, it's going to be a whole different atmosphere than just a basic restaurant that you're ordering food and then sitting down and just talking to the waiter or waitress and just talking to your family. Live music really like lightens the mood for your city.
That's a good point. I feel like there's so many different methods of transportation that you can get somewhere not even that close, that's not necessarily free but just really cheap. Electric scooters are another example of that. We use those all the time around here, and it's only like a couple dollars most of the time. But then, so branching out, that's in your city, right?
Okay, before we branch out, I just want to mention like local parks too. Local parks are an awesome place for you to travel. Like I've gone to local parks before and like literally just set up an Eno and just like chill in front of the lake or like a reservoir or something, and it's so peaceful because everyone there is just like walking their dog or something. There's no like loud noises or anything. It's a reserved and it's super nice. So make sure you guys are checking out your local parks because those are all cheap resources and you're paying your taxes for them, so you might as well get your money's worth. Sorry to interrupt your launch.
It seems like we pass a local park every mile going down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I've probably been to only 1% of them. But obviously within your state, right? There's even more places to go that still are pretty cheap to get to because you can just drive to them. And a lot of these places, since they're within your state, you can drive to them and make it a day trip, right? Go drive to, I know like within our state, last year, maybe the year before, we got really into travel, right?
Yeah.
And we made this huge spreadsheet of all the places in our state that we wanted to go to. That like I think almost all of them I hadn't even heard of, and they looked pretty cool. And there was one. It was like this park that was everything was painted like bright colors. I forget what it was called. I'll have to look at it. And I was like, wow, I've never even seen anything about this. Not to mention it was only like 2 hours away, and we haven't gone yet. But it's just one of those things that you don't know until you look for it.
Right. And how do people look? Like, we literally I think you found a TikTok channel that literally, it was someone that lived in NC, and they would just make a post, and they had like 100 posts of like cool places to visit in NC, and we literally just scrolled through their account. So like whatever state you guys live in, or if it's NC, just like Google like what cool places to visit in North Carolina. Either it could be on TikTok, it could be on YouTube, it could be on the web. You'll probably find articles too. And that's an easy way to find like cheap things that you can do. Like the mural wasn't like expensive, was it? It was probably just like this nature thing. Do you remember?
I'm not sure. I'm looking right now.
Okay. But yeah, anyways, it's super cheap. Like, you can just find these little things to visit, and it'll be things that you never see, because you'll really be surprised, like, the things you see. I mean, we're just in North Carolina, so the only thing we really have, like, that's like quote unquote exotic is like our beaches. But like, it takes like 5-hour commute to get out there. So it's like, you want to find things that aren't so far out, like depending on what beach you go to, like the Outer Banks, like, is what I'm saying, because it's like the travel destination of North Carolina. Like, you have to take ferries sometimes to get to islands. But yeah, you just have to, like, you don't have to make trips like super far. Like, you can literally drive to a state like there and back, and especially when gas is cheap, and you can group with people. And that's like what the big like benefit of going in groups is when you're driving, because you can literally split gas either 4 or 5 ways. If you have a minivan, that's even better. I've made some trips in a minivan before, like through high school, like to far football games and whatnot, and you can literally split gas and food with everyone. So make sure, like, if you guys are making a travel trip, like, plan ahead, like, oh, what are we going to eat? Like, do we want to buy anything now? Do we want to buy anything? Like, what do we want to set like one night to eat out? And I think that's another thing that I want to get into as far as like planning traveling. But yeah, you're right. It's a great point. Like, state travel, there's so much in every state. There's 50 states in America, so like, make sure you do your own research on what's so valuable of a state.
Yeah, and that place I was talking about, I just looked it up. It's called Land of Oz. It's over in the mountains to the west. But yeah, travel planning, that's definitely something we'll get super into, because when we first started like traveling to different places, we weren't very good at it, right? We would run into all sorts of hiccups because we forgot to plan things or didn't even think of things because we just didn't have that much experience. And granted, we still don't have a lot, but like, we just did that 2-week trip to the Northwest, and that took so much planning. Like, cumulatively, it was probably like several days almost, or maybe only a few days, but and we're still getting better. Like, when we were there, the first day we get there, we realized, oh, one of the biggest national parks we had planned to go to is closed the whole time.
Yeah.
And we didn't even think that it might snow. Like, but obviously you get better, and that's why you, like, that's how you get better, is you keep doing something.
Right. And I think there's the right balance in planning. Like, you don't want to over plan to the point where you have no freedom on your trip. And like, if you say you make a 2-week trip and you plan every like hour of the whole trip, you're gonna feel exhausted, and like, you're gonna be like, oh crap, we gotta get to this place next. We have only 2 hours here, but it might take us 3 hours to get through it, and then we have 4 other things to do that day. Like, you don't want to overstress yourself, but like, a way to minimize it so you don't have to take so much plan. I mean, we took a lot of planning. I think I personally had fun doing the planning, which may be something that I might do down the road for other people. But I personally, like, if you're gonna plan, make sure like you're finding the right balance where you have freedom to do things. So like, say you want to do like a couple things, but you don't know exactly how much time it's gonna take. Like, spread it out so then you don't have to be stressed out about spending too much time at one place, and you can really enjoy the moment. Because when you plan ahead and all this time, then you're going to be thinking about, okay, what do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? You're not going to enjoy the moment of the thing that you're doing. And like, when you're going on hikes and whatnot, like, we weren't stressing about like, oh, we have all this stuff to do. Like, it was our first week or whatever, we had all these stuff to do, but we were just like, oh, we're doing this hike, and we're going to go up, and we're just going to do whatever. And then maybe we might think a little bit about like what we're going to do next, and like, oh, we have to hurry down. But we weren't stressed about it. And that's the benefit of planning, knowing what you want to do before you go to a destination.
Yeah, and another important thing to do that is a lot of times you'll go to some place that you had planned to go to, or maybe not planned to go to, and you say, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever seen. I'm gonna stay here an extra day or something. And if you plan too hard, then you're not gonna have that flexibility. But if not, then you can stay the extra day. And another thing I would say is, I mean, granted, again, we don't have crazy experience, but all the trips I've gone on, the one thing I've regretted is not extending the trip, right? I every single time I wish I had made it like an extra few days or an extra week, because if you're going all the way to that place that you haven't been to, chances are you're going to want to stay there longer than 2 weeks or 5 days.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, I think that's a great tip. Like, if you can fit in the time, it'll definitely be worth it. Because the most friction, like, traveling is, like, getting there and leaving. And if you can, like, maximize the utility of, like, going to a place and, like, spending the most time there possible and, like, doing the most things, if it's a high, like if there's a lot of things to do in that area, then you should do it. Because the plane ticket isn't going to get any more expensive if you stay like another week or whatever. So like you might as well stay at whatever place you're going. And another thing, like as far as like planning, the benefit of planning is it'll help you like budget your trip. Because if you see all these things that you want to do, and like say something's like $100 and you like really want to do it, or then there's another thing that's like $50 and you're like, oh, this would equally be as fun. Obviously, then you'll be able to compare and be like, oh, let's just do the $50 thing, and maybe we'll save the $100 thing for later in the trip if we have the time. So that's like we've made spreadsheets before, like two of planning before we even go on the trip, and like we'll have all our expenses laid out, and then we'll know like, okay, we've already spent $400 on our plane tickets and proposed gas, and then one like reservation for something and we don't want to spend more than $600, so we need to keep in mind that we don't want to spend another $200 on the trip. And then that way you'll have the freedom, but you'll also be budgeting in the same time, so you don't have to be stressed out about spending too much money on a trip to a different state or whatnot.
Yeah, and another thing is you mentioned that the hardest part of the trip is getting there and getting back. That's also typically the most expensive part, right? Like next year we're trying to go to Southeast Asia, and those plane tickets are like $1,000 to $2,000. But once you get there, it's extremely cheap. Meals are like $2 or $3, and you can stay in like a big 6-person hotels or Airbnbs for like $50 a night, which like that's one of those places where the longer you can stay, do it, because it won't add up as fast as another place might.
Yeah, for sure. Especially right now with like the US dollar just increasing in value, you want to go to those foreign nations because your US dollar is going to be worth a lot more. And also another thing, like from travel to state, like in the country, that we just recently did to DC is the Amtrak. And like it's literally just a public train. It's basically like an airplane system, but it's trains. And there's like no security. Like you literally go to the train station. You don't have to check in or anything. You just wait for the train, and once the train shows up, you show the conductor your ticket after you get on the train. It's like the Polar Express, and you go wherever you want to go. And we took a train up to DC, and then we had a ride back. So it was a fun experience, and I think that's another good like cheap way to go somewhere, because like we could literally take a train from Raleigh to New York in like 13 hours. And it's like, okay, well, obviously there's some delays. That's the only thing with trains, really. If you're going to travel train, just plan ahead for delays, because usually there are delays. But that's a super cheap and fun way to do it, because you don't have to worry about security. There's not all this friction. You can literally bring a laptop and like do something on the train and like be productive and get work done while you're traveling, which is literally the best hack in the world, I think.
Yeah, and speaking of hacks, if you're traveling internationally or even within your country and you're taking a plane, that is one of the easiest ways to shave off some expenses, is just downgrade your flight experience. I mean, for older people or for some people, it might not be worth it just because you need the comfort. But in our case, we're 20 years old. We're really young. So in past flights, we've chosen just the worst possible flight. We had a 15-hour layover.
Yeah,
on one.
I don't know if it was that much. I think it was like 8 or 10 hours.
Yeah,
but it was from, we landed at like 2 a.m. And then our next flight left at like 7 or 8 a.m. or something like. No, that was longer than that. But yeah, we literally chose to sleep. It was like I remember booking the tickets. It was like a $250 Delta flight, or like we fly Frontier for like $158. And but we had to like sacrifice that time. So we literally had to spend like 10 hours in the Philadelphia airport, and we were just like all sleeping on couches, just down bad. And luckily that was on the back end of our trip, so we didn't have to worry too much about being tired when we got there. But yeah, that's a great point. Like, really just make that sacrifice when you're young. And like first class, I don't see myself ever paying for unless like I really like I'm not stressing about travel at not. But yeah, make sure you guys are just like make sure you check all the airfares and like what are your favorite sites for airfares?
There's all sorts of them. I like Kayak personally.
Okay.
And a lot of them you can set up notifications and it'll tell you like when there's changes in a certain flight that you're looking at. But I mean, Kayak, Google Flights, there's so many.
Yeah, there are a lot. Like it's hard. I've heard like the big thing is like if you're planning for a flight, make sure you like either go in a private browser or like turn off your cookies because they will literally jack up the price. Like even if it's like $10 or $20, they will raise the price if they see that you're shopping for a flight to go somewhere. And if you don't turn off your cookies, or another hack I think is like if you do all your research on like a different computer. And like say you have a library or say you have a desktop and then do all your research on that computer. And so then, okay, all your cookies are going to be on there. But then you go on your laptop or something or on your phone and book it on your phone. And they're going to think that this is your first time looking at plane tickets. So they're not going to jack up the prices, which is, I think is a hack.
Yeah. And one of the best ways to save money, at least that I've noticed, is travel credit cards. And I'm no expert in this, but, There are people that I follow that I'm trying to learn this is hacking with travel credit cards because there are so many different credit cards you can like people have 8 to 10 credit cards and they all have travel rewards and they give you points and you can essentially book things with the points and like you can sign up for credit cards, get sign-on bonuses and then use the sign-on bonuses to buy things. And I've seen there's this guy on TikTok and he's on Instagram too. His name is Zachary Burabel. Burabel, and this guy, like his followers would tell him, "Oh, make this trip cheap." And I saw one the other day. It was a honeymoon to Hawaii, and it was like $13,000, and he made it like $3,000. This guy, it's crazy. And I mean, that's obviously something that takes a lot of learning. But like in the present, just get a credit card that has travel cashback rewards. And it will save you a lot of money if you're going to start traveling.
Yeah. Because if you're traveling already, you might as well gain the points for it. And I think travel credit cards are the best one because you can still use them like on day-to-day purchases, and you're getting points and like basically getting free money for spending it on the travel card, and then it'll reward you when you do make those travel purchases in airplanes, which is honestly even more rewarding because if you do something that you like and it's discounted, like you're just gonna have a good time on the travel. You're gonna be like, dang, I booked this Hawaii trip for $3,000 or whatever. But isn't there? So obviously there's points like for the credit card, but isn't there like another way that you can like buy points like for like websites or whatnot, and it might be cheaper?
Yeah, that's
Or is that the same thing?
One of the methods he uses.
Okay.
You can essentially say you have an American Express credit card or you buy it. I think one of the most popular ones is one of the American Express cards, and there's like the Chase Sapphire, but they give you 50,000 points as a sign-on bonus. But then you can also go to the website or one of the booking websites and buy 400,000 American Express points, and then you can use those to book your hotel. And sometimes it's cheaper to buy them straight off than booking with like an actual card.
Right. And that's only going to take you like 10 seconds to look at the points, do the quick calculations before you like buy it. And then maybe it might be whatever, even if it's 20% off like of what you're paying, it's still a discount. And like, especially if you're in travel or if you're in college and whatnot, every dollar matters. And let's, I don't know. I feel like most people in college think they don't have enough time to travel, but like outside of like summer and like winter break, like there's not much time, but if you make like most of the time, if you plan out your class schedule, you can either have like one day off in the week. Like I've tried every time I made my class schedule is to have off Friday. So then you could literally make like a 3-night trip to anywhere. It could be like out of the state or in state, and you could leave like Thursday night and then have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at that travel location. You could do that any weekend. As long as you're keeping up with your schoolwork and whatnot, then you can do it. And if you make the plans right and budget right, you can literally make those trips as often as you want if you have the time for it, which I think a lot of people don't understand. Like just sit down and just figure out, oh, where do we want to go? How much is it going to be? If it's too much and you don't want to do it, then you don't have to, but you'll be surprised that like, if you really budget and like try to make it as low as possible, when you see like that planned expense trip at the end, you're going to realize like it's not that much money and you're going to earn it back in probably less than a week's work of jobs.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those delayed gratification things because the planning aspect, all the purchasing, all the budgeting, it's not fun. But when you get to the place you're going and you have that experience, it pays off and it's worth it.
Right. And I think one of the things we haven't really touched on yet is just like the benefit of travel is like new cultures. And like when you go to like, obviously if you're going to your local restaurant like 20 minutes away, you're probably not going to experience much more culture, but you will meet new people. But like if you're going even to like across the country or a new country, then you're going to meet like so many different cultures, and like it's going to be a whole different way of living. And like when you gain this new perspective on like a whole different city and how they operate compared to your home city, like you're going to like open up your mind to things more than just travel. And like in everyday life, you're going to be like, okay, well, if you thought about like this culture that does things completely differently, but then if you're doing something in like your job or something, you're going to gain so much out of it because you're going to be way more open-minded. You're going to be like, okay, why is this person reacting in this way? Like maybe you said something that was offensive to them, but you learned that from being in another culture that you saw someone react in a offensive way. So that's another benefit of travel that will even carry over like to your everyday life.
Yeah, and I feel like most older people you ask, if you say, hey, what was the best thing you got out of traveling? A lot of people will say seeing all these new cultures, because it does open up your eyes. And because especially us living in America, we're really privileged. And once you start going to those less developed countries and seeing other people, like it's a really life-changing experience.
Right.
But I guess we are getting onto one of our longer episodes. So to close out, this wouldn't be a proper episode if we didn't talk something about stocks. So,
okay, listen, yeah, travel, COVID, man, it literally ruined all of travel, and like people were locked up in their homes for like a year, and now everyone's like, okay, I want to travel, like I'm ready to go see the world, I'm ready to meet new people. And make sure you guys are diversifying your portfolio to get the benefit of traveling. So what are some of your favorite stocks, man?
Well, I'm going to ask you that question because I know there's one stock you really like.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Airbnb, I think I mentioned it multiple times before. I think it's just a wonderful platform. I mean, it's basically, anyone who doesn't know, I would summarize it really simply. They basically, you can just rent your properties out, and like if you buy a house, you can put it on Airbnb, and then you can rent it out throughout the year, and say random people can book your house, whatever location you're in, and they can go for 2 days, they can go for 2 weeks, they can go for 2 months. It really all depends on your house and like what you want to do as a person. So I think Airbnb, they're set up really good. Like I love the CEO. The CEO has great mind. He's super smart, and he's thinking long term. He's like building all these things on the platform too. So like Airbnb, it's not just going to be like, okay, I'm looking for a house to travel, let me go to Airbnb. That's what it initially was, but he's adding all these other features on there that's like they have like services and like photographers and like, okay, what do? I booked a trip, and then a whole page will pop up like things to do in this city, and then they'll be partnered with Airbnb, and there might be discounts on the Airbnb platform. So it's another good thing to use, which I really love about the platform. Another thing I really love that they just added, I'm just gonna go on a spree here. They have like, if you don't know where you want to go and you're like, shoot, what do I want to do? Literally just hop on Airbnb, and they have like 20 different tabs now, and it's like anything from like, it'll be like camping, it'll be like a tiny house, it'll be like cabins, islands, national parks, tiny homes. One of their tabs that's funny to me is OMG with an exclamation point, and it's all these weird like alien like looking houses, and it's like just like weirdly designed houses, and like you can go stay in one of these weird houses for like a couple of nights, which is enough to like experience it. So if you don't know what you want to do, hop on Airbnb and just click like, oh, amazing pools, I want to go somewhere with an amazing pool. Click on the amazing pool tab, and it'll show you a list of properties on Airbnb with amazing pools.
Yeah, and they have the Airbnb experiences, which is where people can essentially like book some sort of service or like tour. And I've seen all sorts of stories where there are like people in these remote locations where this is literally providing like money for life-changing money for their family because they signed up for Airbnb experiences, and they're offering, like a kayak tour through the river or something. But obviously we talked briefly about Airbnb. I mean, there's all sorts of travel related stocks. You got your hotel chains, Marriott, Hilton. You got cruise lines, airlines, and that was like the hot topic back in 2020, 2021 when they were all closed and the cruises and airlines got absolutely demolished, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is the best thing to buy, blah, 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 blah. And everyone was just talking about them. And they have come back a little bit.
Yeah, but not too much. I'm kind of surprised they haven't even reached all-time highs yet. I mean, I think it's because, like, the worker, they're so understaffed right now. And, like, even though the demand is so high, they can't keep up with it. So it's hurting them right now in the short run. But I think in the long run, it'll definitely pay out. And they're definitely going to be back to booming in a few years. But yeah, make sure you guys like budget. Like, don't just because you think you're in college and like, oh, you're making 400 like bucks a week or whatever from a job, or even 200 bucks a week, you can save up and like just put like $200 towards like a weekend trip or something, or even a week trip, depending on where you go, and like make the trip out there, because the travel is going to be worth it. You're going to experience so much and be like, dang, this is really fun. I want to do it again. So I hope you guys learned something. Make sure you guys like do your own research as far as like stocks and whatnot. Airbnb, I love it. I'm personally an investor and a shareholder.
Yeah. Guess we'll catch you guys in the next one.
All right. Peace.